When we have a good arterial blood gas, we now know what the patient's minute ventilatory demand is. Let's go back to that example of 12 breaths per minute with a tidal volume of 600. I like that because they're easy numbers to work with. That means that the patient's minute ventilatory demand is 6 liters per minute, or 6,000 milliliters per minute. Now, ideally, we want to get that tube out of the patient as quickly as possible. There are methods to weaning, and what we're doing is we're providing positive pressure to help the patient to overcome the resistance of the tube. Now, if you'd like to do the experiment at home, feel free to plug up your nose and breathe through a straw for 5 minutes. I promise you won't like it. We're basically doing that to our patients out of necessity. But when we want to see if the patient is capable of breathing, what we're going to do is give some pressure support, or we're going to turbocharge that breath through the straw. Anyone who's ever scuba dived and taken a breath through a regulated nose, there's a little bit more pressure there, there's a little bit more flow there, and it makes that breath a little bit easier to draw. That's what we want to do for the patient. We want to monitor them very, very closely, and the machine will, of course, have settings to make sure that the patient doesn't go apneic. But once we have that demonstrated hour of breathing at the set pressure that needs to be maintained for a wean, and this is something your pulmonologist is going to determine, that your hospital might have protocols for. This is not a decision to be made lightly, not a decision to be made by anyone but a well-trained physician. But that's when we're going to look at extubating the patient, or taking the tube out. Now, when we take a tube out of a patient, we need to be extremely careful, because there's a lot of aerosolized stuff in the air that we do not want to be exposed to. This is an extremely dangerous time. We need to be very, very careful. We need to protect ourselves, or we can't help patients. And as soon as we extubate the patient, and I have skipped quite a few steps here intentionally because I don't want anyone taking tubes out of patients who shouldn't be. But once we've extubated the patient, we need to have racemic epinephrine close at hand. It's entirely possible to get stridor, which is going to be a loud whistling sound or an airway closure. And this is an absolute medical emergency. We need to administer racemic epinephrine via nebulizer immediately. And that will normally take care of the stridor, but that is an absolute medical emergency and must be addressed immediately. Now, if the patient is extubated and doing well, we're going to give a cool mist humidifier. The air had the vocal cords and upper airway had a tube in them for any length of time is going to cause some trauma. So we do want to give that patient nice, cool, humid air.